I would like to welcome our presenter today, Karen Lin. She's an
Everyone.
she's an eighth-year teacher for the NYC Department of Education. She specializes in the field of special education, in particular working with students with more severe disabilities and autism within District 75. Prior to teaching, Karen was a teacher assistant at two different nonprofit organizations for 3 years, and after which she got into the NYC Teaching Fellowship, which is an alternative path to becoming a teacher. So I'm very interested to hear how that whole thing went. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to you, and thank you so much for being here.
Okay, thank you. I'm happy to be here. Thank you for having me. So my name is Karen. I've been teaching for the New York City Department of Education this is my 8th year. I went to Queens College for my undergrad and I majored in English, and then I graduated with my bachelor's and I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. So I had a friend who was working at the Developmental Disabilities Institute, and that's a nonprofit school out east. And she said, why don't you become a teacher assistant? And you would be working with kids with students with severe special needs, developmental disabilities. And I said, sure, why not? So that's where I started, and I started working in that field. And it was definitely a learning experience. I was working with a lot of students who had a lot of communication issues, a lot of health issues, a very different population of students that I'm used to working with, but I loved it. It taught me a lot of things, including patience and how to be more organized and plan and more creative. And I just thought it was really wonderful. So I did that for 1 year. I was a teacher assistant there. And then I transferred to a place called CUSAC, another nonprofit organization out in Whitestone, Queens. And I was a teacher assistant there for 2 years. And over there, I got a lot more experience, specifically with the autism population. And I loved it. So I applied for, as Samantha had mentioned, an alternative certification route. So typically you go to school, you take your credits, you take your courses, you take your certification exams, you do your student teaching, and you get certified to teach that way. But I went the alternative certification route. So through the New York City Teaching Fellows, which basically I was trained over the course of the summer. I took a couple of credits, and then I was immediately allowed to start working and teaching. I took some certification exams. So I started teaching in the Bronx, and yeah, it was great. And then so I've been teaching for 8 years. I work in specifically District 75, which is a specialized district for specifically children who have moderate to severe disabilities. And I work very closely with children with autism in a 611 setting. And yeah, it's wonderful. Working with kids with autism, you have to be patient, for sure. There's a lot of behavioral challenges, and you want to work a lot on communication, ADL skills, like everyday daily living skills, and you want to be creative and fun. These are some things that, help in this field.
So obviously you work with, a variety of students on different levels. And so can you kind of take us through your day-to-day, especially, I know special education is a little bit different than working with, a group of kindergarteners or first graders or things like that. So could you take us through a little bit of like your typical day-to-day?
Oh yeah, sure. So my students, I wish I had samples to show you. I kind of put this up to kind of, this is the remote teaching version. But a lot of my students, they need schedules and a lot of visuals to help them navigate through the day. So for example, they might come into the classroom, they'll unpack, and sometimes even unpacking, we might be taking data on them unpacking because there are steps to helping them learn how to do the process of unpacking. And then they come in, they sit down for breakfast, and we make that an instructional breakfast too. Like, sometimes our students will get up very often and, they have a hard time remaining seated. So we teach them the rules about, sitting down at the breakfast table and how to, pass things to a peer, because socialization is something that can be a struggle for my my students. And then once everything is finished, we start with a morning circle. It's a great way to get everyone on the same page and start the day together. It's a great way to embed language. Sometimes we do calendar, weather, we sing hello to one another. And then we usually break up into groups and we do what I call rotations. So some students might be sitting with me in one-to-one for more intensive learning. And then some students might be in what's called independent work, where they're doing work that they have mastered and they know how to do on their own. So they're independently sitting there and doing their work. Some students will be in group, no, not so much this year because we try to keep everyone separated this year because of, COVID. But typically, they might be sitting together in a group, socializing with another friend and working on their IEP goals. So all my students have what's called an IEP, an individualized education program. And that it's a document that kind of goes over all the students like specialized needs, including occupational therapy. That's what's like very different about District 75 is our students mostly all get like some level of speech therapy to help them with their speech, occupational therapy to help them with, writing, fine motor skills, help with physical therapy, to work on, their gross motor skills, and trying to think, counseling if they need some level of counseling. So we do that for the morning, and then we usually do like an arts and craft and, a quiet time or get ready to learn, which is like a yoga program to help them calm and get relaxed. And then we have lunch, and then we have group work. Well, we might do group reading and group math. And then at the end of the day, we do an afternoon circle time. So that's a typical day.
Very cool. And then another question is, I know sometimes when you're certified, say from K through 8th, sometimes year to year, your job assignment might change a little bit. How is that in the special education field? Are you usually in the same position? Does it change a little bit year to year? How does that work?
So I'm certified to teach kindergarten to 5th grade. So there's usually 2 grade bands. So, our students might be grouped together K to 2. So there might be one classroom with some kindergarten kids or 1st grade kids, 2nd grade kids. And it's, that's acceptable in our setting. And then 3 to 5. So I kind of bounce back and forth between K to 2 and 3 to 5. So K to 2, we use certain assessments like ABLES assessments. And then 3 to 5, we use the Sandy assessment. And then we have standard alternatives. We also use NYSA, alternative assessment.
Yeah. And then obviously this year has been a very weird year, especially last year going into this year with COVID-19 and all of that thing. So I guess my question is, how has that affected your daily job? And in addition to that, how has technology changed? Like, are you doing things remotely? Are you working only in the classroom? I know, especially with special education students, that could be an issue either way.
Oh, yeah. So this year has definitely been a challenge, and it was a growing moment for myself. I've never been particularly wonderful with technology. I'm a bit of a laggard with technology. I'm very good with being hands-on with my students, and my students do very well with manipulative and visuals. So to try to figure out how to do that online was a little bit difficult for me, but it definitely has gotten a lot better. And, my students specifically, they have a really hard time, sitting and staying engaged. So having them in front of me, I'm able to use a lot of the behavioral techniques that I've learned in the classroom, but them being at home with their parents, they have a very different relationship, which is totally understandable. So sometimes that can be a bit of a challenge because, you don't want to push too hard. You just try your best to play things. You start really simple, like with our students, even in the beginning of the year, you really have to build that rapport and relationship with our population of students. You can't just jump right in and start doing a lot of work and putting a lot of demands. And it's with anyone, not just our students. You have to really build a relationship, ease them in. You have to find motivational things that motivate your students. So for example, if your student loves Mickey Mouse and they it's their first, they love to watch movies that are Mickey Mouse, they love anything Disney, then you might use that to count, teach math. So that's what I do like online. So I find things that they really love, if they love Shopkins, and then I'll try to do boom cards or find worksheets that are related to their interests, and that helps keep them engaged online. And then, it's also a great opportunity for me to speak with parents and have more interaction with them. And I'm able to share with them some of the behavioral techniques that I've learned in the classroom that help students learn and stay engaged, the importance of using a visual, like as you see here, like token boards can help them. Like if I tell them the rules are to sit nicely and, complete their work, every time that they're doing a really good job, I'll just remind them. There's a visual. Oh, look, you earned a token. So this is a token board system. And I also have obviously the schedule. And so as we go down the list, this really helps them to see, oh, there's a beginning and a clear end. So I might put like checks here to help them complete, this helps them to gauge, and also visuals to remind them of rules, like things like this, like listen, use your words. That's really big because sometimes our students will get really frustrated and they might engage in, hitting themselves or other people be out of frustration. So you just remind them, like, use your words to communicate, but using your words might not be verbal because a lot of my students are not verbal. So they might have symbols that they can point to or assistive technology like an iPad to speak for them. Asking for help, things like this. This really helps them. And then what else can I share with you? Yeah, so, it's been a crazy year, but I figured out a system here. I have my little board and it does seem to help. And music helps a lot.
I guess my other question would be too, what would you say are some of the greatest things about your job and also some of the drawbacks of your job? Like some of the things that, a student needs to be aware of if this is what they're going to pursue?
I would definitely say that there is a lot of paperwork if you plan to be a teacher. So some good qualities that you might want to try to work on is just to be as organized as you can. Be a planner, try to plan ahead, and try to stay on top of the paperwork. Unfortunately, paperwork is good in some ways. Like you can keep track of, you can take a lot of data, you can see the progress or the lack of progress your students are making. So it's wonderful in that way. You see if they're learning and picking up the skills that you're trying to teach them. Sometimes it can be a lot to constantly take data. But yeah, so I would say to be organized would be a really good skill. What are some? I would say some drawbacks would be you work with a lot of different, it's good and bad. Sometimes you work with a lot of different personalities when you're especially in District 75. Like I mentioned, you work with speech providers and occupational therapists, physical therapists. They have ENL teachers. What else? You're communicating with the gym teachers and the parents. So there's a lot of personalities that you have to work with. So you just have to be so you just have to be like really positive and be able to work around different personalities, I would say. Yeah.
That kind of leads into my next question. So obviously we know, becoming a teacher, but then are there any opportunities for advancement within this career, or is it basically you're a teacher and that's pretty much it ever.
Oh, no. You can definitely, there's many different roles that you can grow into. I personally am very happy as a teacher, so I'm happy to stay in this role, but many people have advanced to becoming unit coordinators. So some schools will have multiple sites, like maybe one school will have like 10 different sites. So there's the principal who's in charge of everything, and then there's the assistant principals that are specifically stay at one site to help the principal. And then there's also unit coordinators at each site to kind of help manage the day-to-day. And so, yeah, you can become a unit coordinator, and then, or you can become an assistant principal, or you can, eventually become a principal if you'd like.
Sorry. So just as far as an educational path, so if a student is in high school and they're definitely want to become a special education teacher, kind of what would you recommend for them as far as college? Should they be getting a bachelor's degree in education? Should they be looking to beyond that for a master's degree? Just kind of like where is kind of the minimum and the maximum of where you should be going with your education in order to pursue this career?
Okay. Like for example, what I did was I didn't know right away that I wanted to be a teacher. So I graduated with a bachelor's degree in English. And then, I ended up using that to obtain my dual master's in education and special ed. So that's the pathway that I went through. But if you're sure that you want to be a teacher, you can go to school, you can get your bachelor's in education straight away. Mm-hmm.
Great. And then also when, is there anything that they can be doing if they definitely want to be a teacher, is there anything that they should be or can be doing in high school now to either boost their skills or to get prepared for, working as a teacher?
Oh, something that definitely helped me was I worked with kids a lot when I was younger. So I actually had met Cecilia at Shelter Rock Library. And when I was 15 or 16 years old, I remember, like I wanted a side job. Obviously, I was a teenager and I needed money. But I went to the local library and I took a course on babysitting, for safety and, how to handle, situations that may arise when you're babysitting. And then, I got a certificate and I started babysitting the local children in my community. And that was a really good experience for me, working with kids and then I had an after school job where I worked with kids at an after school facility. So that was good experience working with children as well.
And then how do you think that you use typical high school subjects on a daily basis? Like we hear kids, talk about, math and reading and writing within their education now. And, obviously they say, oh, I'll never use pre-calc ever again in my life. So what subjects do you think you actually use on a day-to-day basis that might be important for them to focus on while they're in high school?
Definitely math, math and English, social studies. Yeah, those are the subjects. Yeah.
Is there anything specific advice that you could give for a student in high school that is considering this career, whether something to be doing or just something to think about before wanting to enter this career? Like what advice would you give to somebody?
My advice is if you love children, you should definitely go into this field. Know that being a teacher, there's a lot of paperwork involved, but it's a really great career, and you get to see a lot of growth in your students that you teach. You make a big difference, if you work hard. And yeah, I'm so sorry. I'm a little bit nervous. I apologize. Yeah. Yeah, get your experience, work with children, and yeah.
And then actually that leads me to another question. Sorry.
Yeah.
So you had said that you had gotten your BA in English, right?
Yeah.
Eventually went on to be a teacher. What would you say led you specifically to this career? What drew you to it?
Okay. So like Originally, I wanted, I graduated with a bachelor's in English, and I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. But I know that I've always worked with kids, and I enjoy being around kids. So um, when I s- um, when I started working in special education, specifically with kids with such severe cognitive needs, it just taught me so much about myself, really. It made me learn to, our students, they're so honest. They don't try to hide anything. If they're upset, they let you know they're upset. And just sometimes they have a really hard time communicating. So just being able to be observant and see what upsets them and teaching them the skills to cope with their feelings and to communicate, it was just so honestly very rewarding for me. And I did see a lot of progress in the students that I worked with, and that made me want to continue to be a teacher assistant. And I learned a lot about behavior and things like that, and those are things that very much interest me personally. And yeah, I just found it to be very rewarding.
That's great. So I'm going to open it up. If anybody has any questions or comments, please feel free to either unmute yourself or you can throw it in the chat. And we'll be more than happy to answer any questions that anybody might have.
Well, I know for the New York City Teaching Fellows, I couldn't have more than I think it was like three classes in education, because you're working when you're in the teaching fellows, you're teaching specialized like in high need areas. So they don't want you to have like kind of um, a like a specific idea of what education looks like, because you're teaching a very different setting. So if you already have taken more than like, I think 3 or 4 classes, you might not be eligible for the New York City Teaching Fellows. But yeah, you can graduate with your bachelor's and start to teach.
I will say this. So I actually have my bachelor's in education.
Right, you can start teaching. Right?
I know a while ago, I don't know if it's still the case, but I know a while ago you could start teaching with your bachelor's, but then you were required to get a master's degree within a couple of years. I think it was either 3 or 5 years or something with that. If you're just going to be a regular elementary school teacher within the district, obviously that changes every year. So I suggest that you check the requirements per the state and per the Department of Education that you're looking to go to. So again, that was a couple years ago. I don't know if that's exactly the same as it is right now.
I feel like the state rules and regulations do change quite often, so it's always good to get the most updated information. And yeah.
So if anybody has any last minute questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. If anything comes up that you think, oh, afterwards, I wish I asked this during the presentation, you can always email it to us at teens@levitttownpl.org. I'll actually put that in the chat. And then we can always email Karen and find out the answer to your question. First, I want to say thank you to Karen for being here. I really appreciate all of your knowledge and wisdom. It's been so helpful just to get an idea of what it's like to be in that field, so thank you so much for being here.
Oh, you're welcome. Sorry, I'm not the best public speaker at all, but if you have any questions at all, feel free to email me.
Absolutely. And then just so everybody knows, while I have everybody here, we do have some more of these programs coming up. We have a college major exploration where we have a representative from Malloy coming to talk about their nursing program on February 23rd. We'll also have another one on March 10th, where a representative from Farmingdale State will be talking about their criminal justice program. And then we have another Meet the Professionals on March 30th, where we'll have an entrepreneur who started her own clothing line. We'll be talking about what that process was like as well. We also have some SAT reading review coming up on February 16th, and then we have our SAT study group as well. So please check our website. We're constantly adding new programs, and you are welcome to join anything. If you have any any questions ever, you can always email us at teens@levittownpl.org, or you can always give us a call, and we are more than happy to help with anything you need. So if we have no last minute questions, then I guess we will say good night. And thank you so much to everybody for coming. And thank you again for Karen. This has been absolutely wonderful. And thank you so much.
You're very